hello everyone. As you can see, I'm holding a mic because I'm coughing a bit, so please excuse me if I keep coughing throughout the presentation. I'll try my best not to. Give me 1 second. All right, perfect. Water's ready now, so I could get going. I'm here today to talk about state of staking. Staking, I don't know if you've heard of proof of stake or staking, but it's a term that has been coming up more often in 2019, primarily because there have been a lot of prominent proof of stake blockchains launching. I'm here to try to give you like a crash course on what proof of stake is, on where the market is right now, and then what's left for the remainder of 2019. I'll have three, my name is JK, and I'm the operations manager of Stakefish. And without further ado, let me first introduce Stakefish. Our founder, Wang Chu, is the co-founder of F2 Pool, one of the biggest mining pools of Ethereum and Bitcoin. Seeing that proof of stake was becoming more prominent, he wanted to contribute to the ecosystem in a similar way. And operating a validator or staking pools was sort of similar to the mining pools of the POW blockchains. So that's why he launched Stakefish. Stakefish launched about a year ago, and since then we have a validator on EOS, Cosmos, Tezos, Loom Network, Iris Network, and Box. And we also operate nodes on Chainlink and Algorand. And we are currently facilitating around $30 million worth of stakeable assets. So let me first go through a crash course of what proof of stake is. So in proof of work, you have a blockchain, and miners are the ones who try to solve a really difficult problem, and then the one who solves it first gets to add a new block to the longest blockchain. In proof of stake, instead of these miners, you have these entities called validators. The validators are the ones who determine what is the right blockchain, and they are the ones who add new blocks to the blockchain. And so you need a mechanism to decide like who gets to add the blocks. And the way we do that is by determining how much stake a validator has. What that means is how much of the network's tokens does a validator have, and depending on that, you are able to add more blocks or add less blocks. In this diagram here, you can see the staker, you can see us, for example, as a validator, we are the ones that are adding new blocks to the proof of stake blockchain. So in proof of work, you know that the inflationary rewards, the new coins that gets printed from adding new blocks are provided to the miners. Similarly, in proof of stake as well, once we add new blocks, we get rewards for that. But keep in mind, I mentioned that depending on how many tokens of the network you own, you have a higher probability of producing a new block. But it's impossible for validators to actually hold that many tokens. That's why we have delegators, stakers. Ordinary people, any retail holder or investor who holds these proof of stake coins can stake them, delegate them, give the token power to validators like us. And with that power, we're able to then scale our business and add more blocks than we could have alone. Because these stakers and delegators are delegating to us this power, we pass on some of the rewards that we receive by producing new blocks because they've helped us. I guess the question is, so why should you be staking? So the simple answer is, of course, you get rewards from delegating or staking. But really, I think Arthur Brightman put it in the correct form on his recent essay called On Supply Caps, when he said that staking is a way to redistribute the ownership of the network from people who contribute to the security, who do not contribute to the security, to the people who do. So if you stake, basically you are helping the network become more secure. And so you deserve somewhat of a reward. So let's take a look at this chart, and let's take a look at an example of Alice and Bob. So here in year one, Alice and Bob have 1% of the entire network tokens. Alice decides to stake and actually contribute to the security of the proof of stake network. And so by year 5, her ownership of the entire tokens are scaling with that black line there, which is the total balance of Atom tokens into the entire Cosmos ecosystem. Bob, on the other hand, decided not to stake, and you could clearly see that the ownership has transferred from Bob to Alice. And so this is the reason why you want to stake if you have any coins that are based on proof of stake. But staking does not come without risks. There are trade-offs to staking, and there are two clear trade-offs. First, if you stake, you lose liquidity. You are locking up tokens. If you stake from your own wallet, you cannot transfer it to another wallet. What that means is basically you can't trade it. And so you're giving up that liquidity once you stake. So that's trade-off number one. Number two is because we want to hold people accountable depending on whether or not they trusted their stake tokens to a malicious actor. If the validator that you delegated to cheats, either is down for too long, so meaning that they don't add blocks for a very long time, or says two blockchains are correct, the network automatically punishes these people. And this is what we call slashing. And you will lose a set percentage of the coins that you stake. So that's another huge trade-off. And so despite these risks, I emphasize that you still need to stake. And you're probably wondering, how do I then get involved? Well, you could create your own validator. You could hire infrastructure people to spin up your own validator team. Or you could come to validators like us. And validators provide mainly two services. One is a validator as a service, where we have our own validator and you delegate to us. This is where we own the servers, we own the validator, and you send a very specific transaction to the network saying, I delegate my power, the token power to this validator. You're not giving up ownership in this case, meaning that as a validator, we cannot move your funds once you delegate, so there's no risk on that. Or the validators also offer the node as a service, node as a service business. What this is, it's also known as white label validators. What this is, you will own the server. You will own it, but we operate it for you. But in this case, you don't need to delegate. You own it, so you are just automatically just staking, what we call self-bonding your coins to the server. Now that's sort of the crash course on proof of staking. I know you might have a lot of questions, so please come up to me. Please come find me if you have questions even after that. But let's get into the more interesting stuff. And I'll start off with a few updates on staking-related numbers and data. So. Since this is a chart showing how much of US dollars have been locked up in staking from the beginning of this year till now. At the beginning of this year, around $742 million was staked. That was only 0.6% of the total market cap. Now we're sitting at around $5 billion staked, which translates into 2% of the total market cap being staked. Of course, price appreciation has contributed to this increase in numbers, but also there have been a lot of proof-of-stake blockchains that have launched this year and have contributed to that increase in staked assets. So now let's dive a little bit into those numbers. On the right here, you see a really nice visual representation of how much US dollars have been locked up in staking. Excuse me. On the left, you see by each protocol, the top protocols, how much US dollars have been staked in that protocol. EOS, of course, by far leads with 1.5 billion, followed by Tezos and Cosmos, which both have around $400 to $600 million each. So you would think that EOS has one of the most active staking communities, but of course these absolute numbers really have no meaning unless you actually put it into relative terms. What I mean is, you really need to look at the staking ratios. This is the amount of stake dollars you need to divide that by the total number of circulating coins to get the exact picture. EOS had $1.5 billion at stake, great, but you can see it's only about 48% of the entire network that's being staked. Compare that to Tezos or Cosmos, which is 80% and 90% each. That's a huge difference. And so, arguably, Tezos and Cosmos has a more active staking community. This is largely attributed to the fact that on Tezos and Cosmos, you get rewarded right away. Whereas in EOS, it's a bit indirect. And then also on EOS, unless you are running your own validator, it's very difficult to actually earn as much rewards as on Tezos or Cosmos. The weighted average staking ratio of all these protocols is around 46%. I expect this to fully constantly increase in the next few months and a year with more education around staking. Now, another interesting stat is when you look at the reward rates across projects. You can see EOS is around like 0.1%, and you go as high as EOS, which is around 12%. And on average, this is about 6.3%, which has been lowered. So in May, this average was sitting around at 7.3%, so it's been decreasing since then. But there's been a narrative, looking at this chart, there's been a narrative that's been developing, stating that maybe having higher inflation does not really help out with your market cap. I just wanted to state that that's, I think, to be seen. It's too early of a conclusion because you need to determine the cause and effect of this. Lower cap proof of stake protocols, in order to sustain validators, they need to have a higher reward rate. Otherwise, we can't pay our costs. And so, the cause and effect might be flipped here. So, I think there needs to be a little more empirical studies on this to really determine whether or not there's any causation of a higher inflation rate and market cap. And of course, because this is Investasia, I need to talk about. It would be weird if I didn't talk a little bit about the prices of proof of stake protocols. Largely, the conclusion is the prices of proof of stake protocols has not been great. Outside of Tezos, which has doubled, that's the only, I think, sort of off case. Most of these protocols have not seen significant returns this year. Compare that with proof of work, where outside of Zcash, everything has had higher than 30% return year to date. And Bitcoin and Litecoin almost doubling, and I guess in the case of Bitcoin even tripling, close to tripling. So that's some stats and numbers, but the real reason why I'm here today is to discuss some developments that have happened in the past few months. The numbers I've shown you before, I've presented a similar thing during New York Consensus, but these things I'm about to share now are things that have happened since May and are very new developments. Starting with, slashing has finally occurred. A double signing event has occurred. So if you remember during the crash course I gave you, if the validator that you delegated to acts maliciously, a set percentage of the coins you staked will just get slashed, will just disappear. This has happened on Cosmos on June 29. So what happened was that validator A, I'll call the validator, was experiencing a prolonged downtime. And so when you have a prolonged downtime on Cosmos, you get slashed by 0.01%, which is not a huge lot, and you get temporarily jailed. So the validator A wanted to unjail himself or herself, but in the process of doing that, the validator's backup validator node actually came online. So now the validator has two validator nodes basically participating, which is the definition of double signing. And so that validator was instantaneously slashed 5% and was permanently jailed, meaning that validator address can no longer be used in the protocol. The validator address can no longer be used as a validator anymore. So what that meant was the validator had around $1.8 million staked to him or herself, but around 60K of that disappeared overnight. 7,000 of that was that validator's own money, so no one's really happy about this outcome. I think this shines the risk of slashing to a lot of the investors and people who are staking them. And I've had more discussions since then about trying to hedge these slashing risks. And I'm happy to talk more about how you can do so, but this has happened. It's really time to think of strategies around how to hedge yourself against slashing in the future. Exchanges have finally entered staking in a big way. So exchanges have a unique feature because they hold custody of the entire funds, and so they eat up the two risks, the two trade-offs, meaning the liquidity loss part and the unbonding. So when you're trying to unstake, there's a period called unbonding where you need to wait a few days, a set period of time before you're able to transact and you're able to send that unstaked tokens anywhere. Exchanges totally overstep the liquidity loss and the unbonding periods by these three different ways. So I've seen these three different ways that exchanges have offered regarding their around staking. The first one is they automatically just give out staking rewards to if you keep proof of stake coins in that exchange. For example, if I hold Tezos right now in Poloniex will automatically give me staking rewards from Tezos. And I could still trade them whenever I want. There's no unbonding period. There's no liquidity loss at all. It's perfectly liquid. Second, I've seen also exchanges create another token. In the case of GDAC, they've created a token called Atom and then another token called AtomX, which represents stake tokens. This is, again, I could trade AtomX whenever I want. So there's no liquidity loss and there's no unbonding period. Now the third is pretty interesting. So some of the exchanges have run their own validators like we do, but with a twist. Like in the case of Huobi Pool, you get stake rewards, but on top of that, they will also give you their own pool tokens, which is a nice addition for delegators and stakers. Now, another interesting development is that the validator competition is intensifying, really. On Tezos, around 7% fee, so validators charge fees to delegators. On Tezos, around 7% fees is the bare minimum a validator will need to charge to survive. On Cosmos, arguably, it's around 5%. Around a fifth of the validators are right now offering fees at that point or even lower than that. And so, of course, delegators are happy, but validators are, it's basically harsh competition. And then also, validators are not only competing on fees, but they're also competing on tools that they provide to delegators. A lot of validators are trying to build out dashboards so that it's easier for you to stake and also track how staking is working behind the scenes. And then another key development is that the validators are finally getting to spread thinly right now. There's around 30, 40 professional validators in the world that have proven themselves, multi-chain validators that have proven themselves either security-wise or by partnering up with reputable funds and exchanges or wallets. But they're all chasing down similar networks and they're all being spread thinly. So if you're a proof of stake blockchain, it's becoming harder and harder to retain these professional validators right now. And it will remain that way for the remainder of Q4. Which brings me to the final section of my presentation. So what's next for the remainder of 2019? There's two major things. One is, this goes back to the point I made earlier, there's a lot of upcoming mainnet launches for prominent projects. Examples are Polkadot, Solana, Near, Coda. All of these projects are going to launch in Q4 of 2019, or at least they've announced to. And then also on top of that, a lot of blockchains that have promised to move on to proof of stake or support staking are also going to launch in Q4. Ethereum 2.0 is going to launch in Q1, but there's going to be a lot of developments that will happen during Q4. More, I guess, information about how their staking economics will work out. But Cardano, for example, is trying to launch support staking in Q4. So there's a lot of projects coming up around staking. Now, before I go into point 2, I just wanted to make a separate point on these project launches, and it's that all these project launches will be preceded by incentivized testnets. Cosmos came up with this idea first, where they incentivize validators, participants who run validators on a testnet, where they run it, they try to break the testnet, and the Cosmos team basically rewarded that behavior at the end. And this was an innovative idea, which it provided actually other than just providing the rewards to validators, provided 3 distinct unique value to the ecosystem. Number 1 is you find because of the incentivized testnet, you have practice validators. Launching a chain is not easy. There's a reason why a lot of these projects are running their own nodes to launch chains. It's because it's insanely hard to get outside validators and then coordinate with them to properly launch a chain. And so with an incentivized testnet, you have practice rounds, and so therefore validators are more well practiced. The second part is, from the incentivized testnet, you're able to provide guidance to investors on who the good validators are. Who are the higher performers? Who has stress tested the network sufficiently? These are all good guidance that you provide to future delegators. And in the case of Cosmos, Zaki, who's a part of the Interchain Foundation, just wrote a good blog post about it. And this has been sort of the guidebook for a lot of delegators. And then third, you're able to stress test it in a non-lab setting. And an incentivized test work because you have outside validators. Now finally, you're almost putting it out into the wild. And you're able to catch a lot of bugs, which I know Cosmos, in the case of Cosmos did. And you're basically hardening the protocol for mainnet launch. Solana, Enigma, and Region Network have all announced incentivized testnets. And I am aware of many, many more that are going to announce incentivized testnet fairly soon. Now, the second thing I wanted to touch on is that there's a lot of products that are being built around staking. And they're all focused mainly on making the experience of staking easy for you and efficient. Remember how I said if you stake, you lose liquidity? Well, there are teams working on creating derivatives on these stake coins. There's staking vouchers that have been suggested. There's also an interesting concept called B-Atoms. I recommend checking them out, searching them on Google, or just come up to me and I'll be able to lead you to the correct source to find more information on those. But once those come out, you don't need to worry about losing liquidity anymore while staking. Second point is the risk of slashing was worrisome, right? Well, don't worry. There's insurance products being built out now. And that means that you'll be able to stake, but also hedge your risk on slashing. And then the third sort of paper was that there's not enough data on validators. It's very difficult to compare them. And on top of that, it's very difficult to really see statistics and data on these different proof-of-stake protocols. Well, these entire slides I've created, a lot of it relied on stakingrewards.com. There are these data aggregators that exist today and are constantly improving. There's also a product called Union Market that's also working on trying to work on assessing these validators and providing more accurate information on qualitative accurate information to the investors on who the stronger validators are, where their strengths and their pros and cons are. So these are sort of these are the major 2 themes that I see for the remainder of 2019. And I just wanted to end on this. So right now there's about $5 billion locked up in staking. I foresee this number ballooning to $30 billion in the next year because there's new networks that will be using proof of stake. Existing networks will finally launch proof of stake like Ethereum, and then people will be more aware of staking and they'll increase their stakes. Will be staking more, and staking ratio will increase. There are a lot of opportunities in this space. Products around that $30 billion, like financial products will be needed. A lot of infrastructure will be needed. A lot of data will be needed. There's a lot of opportunities in this entire staking ecosystem. And I just wanted to emphasize that you need to really consider proof of stake seriously and have a strategy around it. It doesn't matter if you're an investor. It doesn't matter if you're a retail holder. Keep in mind of how big this opportunity is and try to think of how you could contribute to it. Or just talk with us, talk with other validators, and I'm happy to make introductions to other validators as well to make sure that you're able to stay ahead of this and consider come up with a proper strategy on how to tackle it. So, if you want to learn more about Stakefish or staking in general, feel free to reach out to me through Twitter or email. There's the QR codes for our Stakefish Twitter, and then a QR code for our Stakefish Weibo account. And that's it.